Well, I'm going to begin, Parker, by asking. I mean, one of the things that I loved most about this film was just the kind of the tone to it. It had this kind of atmosphere about it. It was so kind of gentle, so romantic. And I was wondering if that was something that came across in the screenplay for you, or if a lot of that's kind of added in post production.
Yeah. No, the gentle tone was definitely something that I think we found on set as we were doing it. And then when I first saw the film at Sundance, it was the first time I saw it, and I was blown away by the cinematography, the score, just I guess the grading, like just the way it came out. I couldn't foresee that. It came out so beautiful.
I mean, so sort of little happens in a good way. I mean, in a sense, there's not that much sort of conflict, and I love it for that. I mean, I was wondering, the sort of film that I drew parallels with the Before trilogy by Richard Linklater.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was a film that you kind of took inspiration from when you were kind of deciding to take this on.
Yes, yeah. The the Before trilogies, it was definitely a source of inspiration for Richard and I mean us playing the characters and the way it is done. But Richard Tanne, the writer director, he gave me, it must have been 12 different films to look at, and it was, the grading of this one, the first half of this one, the way he looks at her in this scene. So yeah, we took great inspiration from the 80s and from movies from the 80s and 90s before we started this one.
And it must be nice to have a screenplay of this nature, which just sort of lets you act. I mean, it's not reliant on kind of big explosions going on in the background, in the sense that it kind of gives you the platform to be subtle with your performance. That must have been quite nice for an actor to take on.
Yeah, well, we had 2 car chase scenes that they cut out because, but no, it was an amazing opportunity to act, to learn, to challenge yourself really as an actor. I mean, to play the nuances from moment to moment, to actually listen, and there were long shots held, very close-ups held quite long, and you just see somebody listening and internally changing. Yeah, it was a great challenge. It was very fun.
You guys should have shot car chase scenes and just had them on as deleted scenes on the DVD.
Yeah, just randomly.
But another thing I loved about this movie is that it almost felt like a will they, won't they, and I found myself kind of rooting for them and thinking, oh God, I hope they get together, and then remembering that obviously it's based on a true story, and obviously we know they get together. But did you kind of feel something similar to that when you were reading the screenplay? Did you kind of get a sense for the kind of ambiguous side to it, even though obviously we do know how how it all pans out in the end?
Kinda. No, I don't know. I didn't have. It wasn't until I saw the film. When I was doing it, I just didn't. I don't know. I was just trying to. We did it in 17 days, and so it was just work. It was just go do your lines, play the truth of the scene, and then it's out of order and whatever. But then when I finally saw the film with the music and I heard. I'm pretty sure this is true. That Michelle had her own instrument, Barack had his own instrument, and then when they finally get together, then the instruments combine, and so that kind of thing, it really added to the experience. And then I got the oh no, is she gonna stay on the date? Oh no, she's mad after the movie, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it was after I saw the complete film.
And you mentioned that it was shot over 17 days, but obviously the film itself is set over one day. Can that be quite a challenge for an actor to kind of have the same frame of mind, or be a character that's going in the same frame of mind across a kind of 17-day period where you've got to be, obviously wearing the same clothes will help, but I mean you've always got to be on that same evening the whole time.
No, I mean to play just one day, I mean still every day as an individual in real life, I mean you can go through myriad mood changes and you can learn something from, if you get a phone call in the morning about something, then that changes your day for the rest of, or it changes the rest of your day. And so similarly, I think he picks her up and they get in the car and she sees there's a hole in the car. So instantly she's changed and she's like, what? Harvard student with a hole in his car. So I mean, there were still a lot of changes that that the characters went through, even though it's a day. So I mean, to me, it was no different than playing another film or another role.
I mean, what was it like portraying Obama? I mean, obviously you have to capture the kind of essence of his personality and the kind of nuance to him. But I mean, at the same time, you need to avoid being a kind of caricature. Was that quite a difficult balance to kind of imitate him but not be too imitative?
Right. I mean, avoiding the caricature and a SNL impression. That's down to Rich. I mean, he and Tika, Rich and Tika. They would pull me back, and when we first started, the very first scene we shot, He goes, all right, man, it's a little too much Obama. I'm like, cut it out. And so they would pull me back, and we planned it in such a way that the community meeting speech he gives, that's when you really see the glimpses of the future president. And that's when you're like, oh, that's the guy. Other than that, he's cool, he's behind the scenes, he's just, he's very relaxed. So yeah, it was just letting it all go and just play the truth to Michelle Tika.
I like the idea that you're playing Obama and they're just saying you're being a bit too Obama in this scene.
Yeah. I mean, because especially I enjoy the way he talks because it's so unique that, the very first scene we shot was when they're walking after a drum circle and he's talking about his father. And he's like, the only thing that my father and I had in common, that we both went to Harvard. And that's what I was doing. That was the very first scene we shot. Because I like the way he talks.
Have you found yourself speaking a bit like that just in normal life since making this movie, just dipping into Obama every now and again?
I do. I do it if I've noticed that I will speak like Obama if I am giving a speech or if I'm trying to prove a point. Then, now hold on. Now, Jay-Z is a far better rapper than Gucci Mane. Now here's why. And I don't even mean to do it, but because I think in my head, I'm like, this is a great voice to prove a point. So I
was going to say, if you can sound like anyone when you're giving a speech, Obama's not a bad person to sound like.
Yeah, Gilbert Gottfried.
But I guess, how did you go about kind of portraying him in a period of time where we didn't really know what it was like, just in the sense that the Obama we know is the Obama we see giving speeches, the Obama that's very much in the public kind of arena. But this is the Obama that is behind the scenes. I mean, how did you go about kind of discovering who he is? Was there much footage from that sort of period or pictures? Or
there's not a lot of footage of a young Obama. There's maybe a minute and a half of when he was 29 at Harvard, and he's speaking on behalf of a professor. But to build the character, so to get Barack Obama at 28, I started from his earliest memory that I could find in dreams from my father and worked my way up. And I thought about, literally like thought experiments. I would just sit there and think, what was it like to grow up in Hawaii and in a state where people visit you and they go away? And to have a white mother and white grandparents who raised you back in the 70s when you didn't see yourself on the screen. And I, went through each stage of his life. Indonesia, what was that like? Packing for that, moving with your mother to this strange place. And that's where I found the confidence and the charisma, because this guy who had seen a lot and had an interesting perspective all of his life, up until 28 years old, and that's who, he's a smart, capable person who's very comfortable in his own skin. And then I also watched whatever I could find of the current President Obama, like in Martha's Vineyard, or when they stop by, a fish shop or a convenience store when they're on vacation, and it's like the most behind the scenes you ever find. And
I mean, there's a pretty good chance, in fact almost a guarantee, he will sit down and watch this, and not only is he going to watch it, he's going to scrutinise over your performance and see how you portray him. I mean, how does that make you feel, knowing that the president is going to watch you portraying him? That must be quite surreal.
I don't care what he thinks, man. No, no, you know what it is? I'm really interested to see what Michelle thinks. I think, because if it's you, I think he'll watch it like really scrutinizing it, and she'll say, yeah, that was like him, or it's kind of like him. But I'm excited for them to see it either way.
Do you feel quite close to him now? I mean, having studied him so sort of intricately as you have, and now you've obviously embodied him and tried to get into his head. I mean, now when you see him on the TV, I mean, you must feel a real kind of affinity towards him.
Yeah, I do. Well, I always have. I've been a fan of Barack and Michelle Obama since 2006 when they burst on the scene. They burst on the scene in 2004, but then I first really got into him in 2006. But yeah, watching speeches and hearing him on like Mark Maron's podcast, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? I don't know. I really got inside his head.
And I mean, have you ever actually had the chance to meet him? Is that something that's come about? Or?
No, man. I haven't met him. I haven't had the chance. I hope so. I hope. It'd be great to meet him before he gets out of office, but it's down to the wire.
And I mean, you've got a great chemistry with Tika in this. I mean, you spend so much time, obviously, on screen. I was wondering if you spent much time together beforehand to kind of establish that chemistry, or did it just come quite naturally when you started shooting?
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry with Tika came super naturally, but not like, it's a weird way to say it. No, our chemistry was like, yeah, it was very natural. Because I live in London and she lives in LA, we only met for 2 days when we did the chemistry reading. And then we would Skype for about 6 weeks until we went to Chicago and made it. So we did not see, I didn't see her. Yeah. Oh, and then we rehearsed for like a week, and then we started. But it was natural. It was just, we just got along.
And you mentioned you live in London. I mean, obviously, America's going through, at the moment, if you're just sort of watching the news, it's with the whole kind of forthcoming election. Do you feel quite detached from it being over here in the UK, sort of being away from all of it? I mean, how does it feel kind of watching it from afar?
Yeah. I mean, I do feel, how do I say, I've been here 8 years, and so part of it is I felt detached from the Obamas in general, because he was elected to office. I got here in July 2008, so he was elected to office after I'd moved. I've missed his entire presidency. And so to watch, now that we're up for a new president, to watch it, it looks like a circus. It's insane. And I can't believe how much money we spend, how much time we spend, and the headlines just to get clicks, and the spectacle is what, to watch it from outside looking in, it looks ridiculous. And it's very hard to find the true, like what they're truly trying to say, what they're truly going to do, what their true plan is. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. Donald Trump, obviously, nobody knows what he's talking about. You know, it's all nonsense.
I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
No, exactly. And so to watch it from over here, it's baffling.
But I mean, you mentioned obviously the fact that it is ridiculous, and I mean the word kind of, it's almost like a circus. It's just bizarre, but at the same time, it's quite terrifying as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. It's and I try to tell the Americans that when I go back, I say, guys, people look to America as like, I heard somebody say that they grew up in India, and they were saying like, no, we would turn on the TV to look at like, what is America doing? Like as far as like, for leadership, as in like, oh, what are they up to now? We're like, what are they gonna do? As a beacon of hope. And so I tell people like, dude, I travel over the world now, all over the world, and they are now looking at us like, what's happening? Not in a good way. So yeah, I hope that we come to our senses and can stave off a Trump presidency.
Indeed. But going back to the movie, which is, well, I was going to say it's sort of on a different matter entirely. It's very sort of it's all connected. But I mean, this film is much more than just a romance. I mean, obviously, it's all through the kind of conversation to sort of discuss feminist issues, family values, what it was like being kind of a black woman in the workplace in the 1980s. Yeah. I mean, when you were kind of reading the script, was that another thing that really grabbed you? The kind of the sort of social, political context of this film there's a lot more to it, isn't there, than just this kind of core romantic narrative? Yeah,
but I also think, I mean, the conversations they have, I think, are very true to who they are. It seems like this is what they would talk about. I mean, on a date, I would talk about hip-hop and ambition and living in London, right? And for them, I think that is just who they are. And he would know random stuff about artists, and she would know, you know, she speaks French and she played piano, and she's just like, oh, this is just what I do. And then coming from the Southside of Chicago, a predominantly black area, making it out to Princeton and Harvard, and then coming back and working in this white corporate world. I mean, yeah, this is just what was on the tip of their tongues and what was on their minds. But it definitely illustrates their varied background, right? It's not like they had this, you know, I like the absence of privilege. It's not like she grew up going to Martha's Vineyard and, you know, grew up in Connecticut and, you know, 2 grandfathers prior had gone to Yale, and so she goes, you know what I mean? So I'd love to see the journey that these 2 characters have made.
And does it feel like quite an important time, you think, for this film to be released? And that it does, I mean, very and subtly so, but it does kind of celebrate black culture and identity. I mean, particularly also that kind of like art exhibition they go to as well. How do you think right now this is a nice time for this film to kind of be released?
It is, yeah. It's a good time for this film to be released for anybody. It's peaceful, it's sweet, it's charming, kind of lulls you into 1989 where things were slower and people just spoke to one another and they listened to one another. So yeah, no, it's a good film. I mean, in terms of being a black person or a white person, and is in this case, Barack Obama is of mixed race, and he talks about that, and he touches on his experiences. So yeah, it's just a beautiful film.
So here's obviously such a great couple. So here's the big question, Parker. What's the secret to a long-standing relationship? Do you know? Does anyone know?
No. Man, all sorts of things just popped in my head I should not say. Honesty and communication, I guess. No, communication, and then honesty.
In that order.
Yeah.
So just my final question is just about a forthcoming project. You've got Sandcastle coming up. I was just wondering about how your role fits into that particular story.
I play an engineer, Sergeant Robinson, I believe. And so the main group, like the group of soldiers, they've been tasked to protect and help repair this pipe system that I am engineering or in charge of. Yeah, and then war stuff happens, but
Bloody war stuff.
yeah, but it's good. I heard it turned out really good, and it was fun. It was my fourth time. Yeah, my third film in Jordan, so it was like going home. I like it over there.
Well, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey!